That was weird. That made it weird. Okay, you over there just like, bug hazel there.
What's going on, you guys? It's your Huggable Hipster here, and welcome to the first episode of my new podcast that I'm doing called The Hunter's Cafe, where we talk about anything and everything Soulsborne, Souls-like, and don't mind the hunter in the corner. They're just here for your protection. Today, we welcome our first guest, a Souls lover as well, Jade. They are awesome. They are brave. They are a warrior. There are also many other things, but they are also a former Twitch streamer and YouTuber who just reached 1,000 subscribers. Hi, Jade.
Hi. Wow. How am I supposed to live up to that sort of like introduction? You know that you ever go to a talent show and you're next up after the like class act of the night, and you're like, how am I supposed to follow that? I've got a reputation to live up to now.
And today we're going to be talking about everything as an introductory episode to this podcast that we like about Souls games, what our favorite bosses were, what our favorite moments in the Souls franchise were. And I have a list. I don't normally usually create lists, but I have a list. So, Jade, to start things off, when you think of a Souls game in recent ones that you've played, what is the one that is your favorite?
Oh.
I know, it's a loaded question.
It really is, because if you're talking about Souls, three things comes to mind. You think of Dark Souls or Demon Souls, or you think Soulsborne. So you've got the Souls games and Elden Ring, or you've got Souls-like. And those are all the games that have really wanted to like capitalize on that sort of trend and the popularity of the really, really edgy dark fantasy sort of motif that we've gotten in Dark Souls and the high levels of challenge. But if we're just sticking to like the core three Dark Souls games, I mean, one, I don't know. Maybe I'm old school like that, but Dark Souls 1 for me was something special. That was where I had played Demon Souls. I got through Demon Souls. I really liked it. It was like the second game that I got for my PS3. And I was like, wow, that was really cool. I didn't understand a lick of it. I was just fumbling my way, summoning in the first cooperative ghost that I could find to help carry my ass through it. So it was tough. But Dark Souls 1 was where it really became special for me, because that was where it clicked. That was where I understood like the mechanics. And I think that game probably is going to ever hold a very near and dear place in my heart.
Oh yeah, same here. That was, as you know, it was the first Souls game I ever played. And when I finally beat Smo and Ornstein, I was like, that's it. That's my clicking moment. And then I went into Artorias and I fell in love. I fell in love, Jade. Like, I don't think people understand how incredible the boss battle Artorias actually is. It's so good.
Well, rip Pikachu and Snorlax, but as much as I hated that fight, that was enough into the game where, I mean, you had just gotten through Anor Londo, right? And Anor Londo, like coming out of Lordran and into Anor Londo in and of itself was a pivotal moment in the game. It really shifted gears on you, especially getting through Sen's Fortress. But
yeah.
You finally get through all of the precariousness that is Anor Londo and this like magical world that's in front of you, and you get into a boss fight, and there's two of them. As if it wasn't hard enough, the majority of the fights prior to that were all just single big bosses. You know, you think Gaping Dragon, for instance, is a giant crocodile with teeth ribs. I don't know what they are. They're like out of his chest, right? You know, but you get to Anor Londo and then Ornstein and Smo, and it's just that fight and the music, and then you beat one, and then the other dude absorbs the guy's power, and I'm just like, thanks, that's cute. Thanks for that, Namco.
Yeah, no, it's wonderful, actually. I mean, I always love whenever, a big hulking cannibal absorbs lightning powers. I always need that in my life.
Yeah, like a hole in the head. Like, I've got 6 for what it's worth of piercings.
Oh, I only have 1 of each. I'm still a noob.
All right, we'll get you leveled up. That's how it works. There we go.
Next thing you know, I'm just gonna get an eyebrow piercing and call it a day.
Awesome. Yep. You know what? We'll get the bridge. We'll get the eyebrow. We'll get the septum.
Metal detectors will hate me.
Or love me. I mean, they always go off every time I'm near.
This is true. You know what?
Did I just finger guns? I just finger guns. Okay.
It actually kind of reminds me of the movie It back in the 1970s, of where the kid was just like trying to like flirt with someone else in the movies. He's like, what's up? You see, guys, you don't understand this. I have been friends with Jade for what, almost 6 years now, and this is our friendship right here, just pure chaos.
If you've played Dark Souls or are in content creation, or if you're the type of person who really hates themselves and you do both,
that's true.
There's got to be a level of chaos involved.
Now, I do have to ask you, this wasn't one of the questions I sent to you, but I'm curious. Did you play Dark Souls 2? So
Dark Souls 2 is actually how I got my start as a content creator.
Oh.
When Dark Souls 2 came out, I had moved out of my parents' house that year. Like, this was my first time out. I went in on a flat with a couple of buddies of mine. And my brother and I were like best of friends during my teen years. We did everything together. My friends hung out with him. He hung out with my friends, that sort of a thing. And we both loved Souls. But we never really got to spend time together now that we were out of the house. And he was like, hey, why don't we play Dark Souls 2 together? And I'm like, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. You know what? So you can see my screen. I'm going to stream it, and we'll just make a fun little show of it and have like a Skype call and stuff like that. And we'll do that. And so I played through Dark Souls 2. And then once I got my head wrapped around all of the changes, because it was very different. Like in Dark Souls 2, that's also where you could do like diagonal rolling. Yeah, so that threw me for a loop. I got my head wrapped around all of that, and the entire iframe window for your rolls had changed, and the entire hook window for your parries had changed. It was all different. We get Scholar of the First Sin, and I got that, and that was when I decided to min-max my build. And I went in, and there was an editor online at the time, and I loved being able to min-max my build. I did you know how there was the bonfire aesthetics in 2, right? Where you would be able to put yourself into New Game Plus for the area of that bonfire. I went with a cast speed build and used bonfire aesthetics to be able to get myself, like, I think it was Crystal Soul Spear, and I was throwing them as fast as I would like just any ordinary spell early game. And so, yeah, it was so much fun. I maxed out my cast speed, and I was the caster of the group.
See, it's interesting because I've heard so many differing opinions on Dark Souls 2 of where either a lot of people love it or a lot of people hate it. At first, I couldn't stand it because, number one, the enemy saturation, it was so much in that game. But also the fact of where like everywhere else you go slow except the ladders. I felt that kind of weird. I was like, why am I climbing up the ladders really fast, but everywhere else it's kind of like I'm wading through water almost.
Yeah, that's fair. You know, I felt like the original Dark Souls was a bit floaty like that too, in its natural navigation. But then again, when you're climbing up ladders or down ladders and whatnot, it was roughly that same sort of floatiness, that sort of sluggishness that it's like walking through the mud. I don't know that I never really recognized the difference in the ladder traversal in 2. But it would be really strange to me if I went back and started saying like, "Oh, I'm going," and then you get to the top and you're just like, "Yeah, but you know, I could walk, but I'd rather tiptoe."
It's so funny because that's one of the playthroughs I'm doing currently right now, because I had played up to a certain point last year and I stopped at the Lost Sinner boss battle. And then I continued on after this year because a lot of my friends were hating me. I mean, lovingly nagging me to play the rest of the game. And right now I'm on the boss battle where you have to like defeat the multiple skeletons in that area. So it's very interesting going through this game because, number one, I started to like it again because you have the Bell Gargoyles and you have Ornstein back again, which I was really happy about that. But one thing I also really appreciated about Dark Souls 2 was the fact of where its unapologeticness of you can customize literally anything you want to in this. And I think that's where they went through with Bloodborne eventually.
I could see that. There definitely was a difference in the pacing. And like, take for instance, Majula. Majula is probably one of my favorite hubs. I definitely prefer it to 3's, but just the music, I don't know, maybe it's just nostalgic to me, and that's my nostalgia speaking, but you get there and it's just like this vast, like sunny sort of, well, sunset, I guess, sort of picturesque landscape in front of you. And I thought that was really cool. And then there are other mechanics, like you think about the, I forget the little stones that you put in the walls. What are they called? It's the little mouth. And then there's the fragrant branch of yours. So
yes.
there were a few different of those sorts of mechanics where different areas were a little bit more inaccessible until you got the requisite item, which was harder to find, and you could only get those at certain areas of the game. Where I feel that Dark Souls 3 kind of lacks in that is a lot of it is, sorry, it doesn't open from this side. Sorry, doesn't open from this side.
That's a lot of it.
Right. There was some of that in 1.
Also the easiest Souls game.
It was.
All of them.
But it was funny because Dark Souls 2 got criticized for being so much easier than 1, yet everybody loves 3.
I don't understand that, because that's kind of like a double standard if you think about it, you know? So whenever I played 3 after I played Sekiro, and I was, maybe that's why I found it incredibly easy, because after anyone plays anything that has Ishin sword states in it, you're going to find it easy. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're fighting Smo and Ornstein. I don't care if you're fighting the Witches of East Hemwick. You're going to find every single boss battle that you encounter easy. Especially if you go from playing Sekiro to God of War Ragnarok. That is a twister, because I got used to different mechanics entirely, and I was like, does every game just seem easy now?
Yeah, well, when you have to get down like your parrying timing or your positioning timing or your jump timing, whatever the case may be, if it's very, very much that sort of down to the wire and that sense of precision, especially with Sekiro, where it was, I mean, you couldn't do anything without being precise on everything. It was very unforgiving in that regard. And I remember I got to Madame Butterfly, and this isn't the controller, but I was playing the game. I was literally live on stream. And I'm playing the game, and I'm dying to Madame Butterfly left and right, hand over fist. I finally get to one part of the fight, and I'm like, yes, I think I've got this down. I think I'm on rails, and all of a sudden I hear crunch, and my bumper fell off the controller. So, I mean, it was getting frustrating, don't get me wrong, but it was not one of those moments that were rage frustration broke my controller. It was me. I was literally, I finally felt like I was getting it down, and never played it since.
Gosh. It's so fascinating because, like, and I just want to clarify for those, you know, who might be thinking, Soulsborne is, Sekiro is a Soulsborne game. It's not. Just going to clarify that really quickly. I know that so many people have said on Twitter, it's definitely a Soulsborne game. It's like, it has themes and motifs of one, but if you look at it, it relies heavily on pairing. There's no multiplayer. There's different buffs that you can use for sure, but it relies basically on the player's patience and willingness to complete a boss battle. Because there are certain boss battles in there that look so incredibly challenging from the outside. Like, for example, the poop flinging monkey.
Yep.
I will never forget that one. You should have seen the look on my face when I thought, oh my God, I finally got it. And then it just gets up. I'm like, oh, shit.
Just kidding.
Damn it.
Welcome to Dark Souls.
Welcome to Masochism 101.
Thanks. Cool. I just called it, what was it? Stockholm Syndrome? Yeah, my Stockholm is calling. I gotta go. Because you were actually touching on one of my favorite moments, I think, in Dark Souls 1. The whole Artorias arc. I mean, we got some of that in the base game before we got the Prepare to Die edition, where it was, you know, it had the DLC included and all that. The DLC was interesting. I think probably walking into the Darkroot Garden for the first time in the past, where you get to see the whole area, and it's just completely taken by the deep. It's you know, you can see Manus's influence over, and you get to see firsthand just all of these things that were kind of suggested in lore. Dark Souls works predominantly by giving you little bits and pieces. The majority of the storyline and plot you only get from scattered thoughts from somebody who's like they're dying hollow breaths right before they fade away into ash. Or, somebody else who has, this item that they give you, and the item flavor text is something like that's the extent of a lot of the game's narrative. You start off with this really highly cinematic introduction when you open up the game, and then that's it. That's all you got. You're just slapped right in the middle of the undead asylum. So to finally have a moment where you get to actually experience it, you get to see it. And if you've fought Sif prior to that, then you're like, wait, Artorias rings a bell. Now, if you fight Sif after the DLC, he recognizes you. And that's actually really cool. That was a nice touch, but I think it probably was. When you go back into the past and you get to see exactly the cataclysm that brought ruin upon the kingdom, and Artorias' part to play in it.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I think Dark Souls is so monumentally amazing, because psychologically, when you look at all of the pieces that fit together, like especially like if you just Firelink Shrine alone, it's just one big circle, how everything is just interwoven and interconnected. The mapping system in that is probably one of the best in any game I've ever seen, really, because all of it links back to Firelink Shrine and the hollow of where they're in the bonfire. So I think that, and personally, just to, speak on my favorite, I think it's in it's in Demon Souls, and it's a very simplistic moment. It's a very simplistic boss battle, but when you finally beat the dragon, it's kind of like this really cheesy, not much of a care in the world boss battle of where you literally have to string two pieces of magic at it and then look at this character's face and decide, yeah, I'm gonna kill this dragon, which it made me instantly think of Game of Thrones in that instance. And
I can see that.
And I was just like, this is just a monumental moment. It's one of my favorite moments in a Soulsborne. And you're just looking at this dragon's face, and it's like, this is literally it. It's easy. And so many players have so many different interpretations of that moment. But either that or Artorias, where you see the final cutscene of where, what darkness overtook him and how everything just overcompensated and was just like, okay, it's either you go back to Firelink Shrine or the darkness takes over you.
Right. Yeah, the whole arc about the Abyss Walkers was such a it was so cool, I think. And then obviously when you're in New Londo ruins, for instance, where you got to get the Abyss Walker's ring to be able to even go down and fight the Four Kings. That stumped me for a while, by the way. But the whole mythos around that, and just how much of a blight it was on their society, and how it brought such cataclysmic ruin, it's so neat. And with that minimalistic storytelling, those very, very light touches, those gentle suggestions, almost like a whisper at the back of your neck. And that's the extent of a lot of the storytelling. So when you have those pivotal moments, like take for instance when you finally take down Gwyn, right? You have two choices at that point. And you may not even know that you have two choices at that point, but you do. You have two choices when you take down Gwyn. And those become, because there's such a juxtaposition against the very minimalistic narrative and storytelling, those brief moments where you have that decision, and it's wildly up to interpretation in a lot of ways. It's so much more powerful than having this, like, Hollywood style cinematic ending, for instance.
Yeah. And it's interesting because like people are going to think like, wait, there's psychology in Dark Souls. Yes, there is a lot of it, actually. From this conversation alone, there's already a lot of philosophical inputs, a lot of Sisyphusian units that are being put in place with Dark Souls. But to go on an interesting and quite possibly funny note, what was one boss in any of the Souls games that you got the most frustrated with?
Can I just say yes?
I can name like 3 off the top of my head right now.
I think the one that annoyed me the most, to the point that I just chose to cheese him, was probably Ceaseless Discharge.
Oh, interesting.
Right. So Ceaseless Discharge is not technically meant to be fought this way. But when you go get the what is it, the gold threaded robes? Oh, I can't remember what they're called. But you pick it up, and then all of a sudden, Ceaseless Discharge is like, "Yo, that's my sister's clothing. I'm gonna wreck your day now, fam." You can actually kite him back to the like archway that you came into to get into his arena. And if he reaches and does that arm slam, you can get him to just clip through the floor and then instantly die.
How about? Oh, I wish I had known about that.
Yeah, because the first time that I found those, it was really, really great. The first time that I found those garments, and I just got splattered because there was no way I was going to be able to fight him properly. But I think that was probably the most annoying boss fight. I don't know that it was the most rage-inducing. And I want to say probably in Demon Souls, the flame... Oh, what's his name? I can't remember. He's the flame demon.
Yeah, the flame lurker or something?
Flame lurker, thank you. Yeah, I think that's it. He I don't know what it was, but I just couldn't get his patterning down, and I had a really hard time. Him and probably the dancer in Dark Souls 3 are probably tied for me.
That was my favorite boss battle of that game. It was so good. I loved it.
It was really good. And it wasn't until I had to actually like look up YouTube videos where people dissected it, and it wasn't until I saw one who was by a musician.
Oh.
And what he did was he actually studied the rhythm in boss fights in Dark Souls. And what it was is that there are different types of rhythms that the bosses will fight in, and they're actually very structured. Like a lot of times, like if you play an instrument and you think of like a 4/4 time signature, then that's very common. A 3/4 time signature where you have like a waltz, for instance, that's very common. A 2/4 or a 3/6 even time signature, those all make sense. The dancer is something akin to like 5/4, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
It's really fast paced.
So she's got an extra beat that you're not anticipating, and so you're used to rolling either 2 or 3 times based upon that rhythm, and then she's going to come in with that final swing and catch you because you're operating on a different time signature that she is. So that's that sort of thing. If we're talking about like music metrics, and that was what finally made sense to me because I'm a drummer, so rhythm, like speaking to me in that term, and then I'm like, now I get it.
Yeah, you see that's how I felt about what was it, the True Monk in Sekiro, because you have that entire kind of ballet and musical dance that she goes through, and that was by far actually my favorite boss battle of Sekiro, because when you go through that and you see not only like the leaves falling down and swishing every single time she gets up her robe, it's absolutely incredible. So, I mean, the way that music is embedded also into Dark Souls games and Soulsborne, it's not surprising either. Yeah,
Motoi Sakuraba actually is one of my favorite composers in gaming. I knew him more notably from like the Tales of games as well as Star Ocean. So he was the composer for those, and I was a big fan of him. And then when he came in to do Dark Souls, I'm just like, oh, sir. Hello. I got the special edition Dark Souls version too. It came with like the map of Lordran and the art booklet, which is really cool, and then also the soundtrack. And nice. I have the soundtrack on my phone listening to Dark Souls music because I'm metal like that.
You see, well, I listen to that whenever I write articles, so I'm just listening to like either Sleep Token or that in the background. Like I love Sleep Token so much.
Yes. Oh my God.
So amazing. And I knew that you were a big fan before, but then I went down the rabbit hole of Sleep Token. I'm like, what?
Yeah, it's not to get too deep into that and derail our conversation too much, but it's a goddamn shame about what happened in recent times.
Yeah, I just heard about that today.
Yeah. I think that's awful. And every time, like as a content creator and having been a content creator in some capacity, you're always looking over your shoulder and kind of sleeping with one eye open with regards to how your data is potentially accessed, right? And for us as content creators, there's a lot of people who are out here, literally being a big fan and supporting us and cheering us along the way. But it only takes one person to get, some nefarious idea in their head and then act upon it. And it literally can ruin everything, not just for that creator and that entire creator's career, but also for the entire fandom around them. And that's exactly what's happened.
Oh yeah. Like I went through identity theft last year because of it. Like there was one guy who actually claimed me on his taxes, claiming that I was his wife. And I'm just like, sir, I've never been married. Like, no.
I'm sorry. Did you buy me a wedding? Did I get to go to Hawaii? Because I wasn't sober for this, apparently.
It's so funny too, because I looked at my mom and I was like, well, that's something I obviously wasn't, awake for. Like, when did this happen? Was I asleep?
Right.
Like, what?
Yeah, I know. I must have been sleeping for 2 years.
Sleeping Beauty. I'm wishing.
Are we going back to the Disney reference? Okay, so before we started recording this, by the way, we were on this spiel about Disney references, and apparently it's made a comeback. So now you get to enjoy it. Take it away.
Let it go.
Oh, perfect. Great. All right, Adina. Little did we realize your name was Adina Menzel.
My name is Ariel, so it actually works out perfectly.
Yeah, but you weren't singing Under the Sea. You were singing Let It Go.
Flounder something.
An attempt was made.
Swish, flop, flop. I don't know.
Is that the entire part of that song that you remember? Like,
what is? I even forget. Look at this stuff. Is it in?
Yeah, wasn't there like there was a TikTok meme for a while. Look at this stuff.
Wait, what was that? Oh no, I know that's gonna annoy me now that I don't remember. Oh, look at this stuff. Is it in need? What did you think my collection's complete? What did you think I'm that girl? The girl who has everything.
That's what you reach for as an Xbox controller. Someone's played too much Dark Souls when.
It's true though. I mean, like even though I die multiple times in that game, I'm just begging for more. So it purely is masochism at this point.
After a while, it becomes a willful choice. You understand this?
It is, but also it's one of those things of where like people, and this is something I never understood, and it wasn't on my list of questions, but I'm very interested to know what you think. I always get comments of people saying, I don't know how you don't rage to these games or throw your controller or do any of that kind of stuff. And I'll be honest, I've never raged at any Souls game at all. I've never gotten mad at one. I don't feel the need to, because it's like anytime that like, and you know this, like I have my degree in psychology. So we were taught very heavily in our classes how mental preservation and how to kind of quell our own mental demons to a degree. We're getting psychology by learning psychology to a degree. And I always thought that, that's such bad mental hygiene to have angry outbursts like that. So I never understood it. And then I always saw people discussing and asking me. So I thought we'd take the conversation in that direction and talk about that a little bit.
So it's interesting that you mentioned too, because this goes into one of the key facets. Like for me, I'm a manager at my job and I'm responsible for hiring people that are on my team. But I'm not just, somebody's boss. I want to be there to mentor, to help cultivate, to help grow. I'm a pillar of support because they're the ones that are really doing the grunt work. And I am privileged to be able to lead the team. So when it comes down to things like that, what you've identified with what sort of qualities that sort of awareness produces, it produces a sense of self-awareness. And from that self-awareness, you can then learn to cultivate emotional intelligence. And a key facet of emotional intelligence is self-moderation. So when you're aware of these things on a conscious level, just day in and day out, as you live and breathe, it becomes a lot easier to separate yourself from the situation where you don't really feel as impacted. It's not like you're just like, oh, I'm wrestling down how how angry I am because this is making me so no, you see yourself as one of the chess pieces in the board of life, so to speak, and the circumstance or situation, it doesn't define you, it is not you, it only has this the feelings that you have are only a response to the outside stimuli. And so when you recognize that that is just a stimuli or a stimulus, and that stimulus is evoking a response in you, you then can help nurture or guide or cultivate that energy into something productive.
And that's, it's so crucial that we bring up these points, because I know so many people think of a kind of, not anger, but like raging in a kind of like just a one faceted level of where like they get mad of something, they don't have emotional control, and then it just pours over into everything. When in reality, it's not even thought about that deep. And I see so many people kind of let their emotions take control and take the wheel instead of kind of cultivating their own barriers and boundaries within emotional control. And it's something of where, you know, even people have commented saying like, you know, people have said that they've stopped playing Sekiro indefinitely because they've broken controllers over it. And at that point, I kind of think, well, okay, if you're breaking controllers, like forcefully, like throwing controllers and breaking them, then that's something that you need to seek help about. There's something deeper going on. It's not just a video game at that point.
Me, after I just admitted that I had broken the bumper button off of my controller at Madam Butterfly.
Same thing, but that was after years of usage and not like, you know, being like, damn you, don't do that.
Well, I think it's good to note too, when we have that self-talk in our mind, or when we frame this conversation that we have in our head in relation to whatever activity that we're participating in. Take Dark Souls, for instance. Dark Souls, if we approach it knowing like, oh my God, it's going to be hard. Sure, it is going to be hard. And there will be periods of time where you will feel frustrated. That's part of the experience. But you can't understand the value that that brings until you overcome it. It is that sort of like journey of self-discovery almost. Like when you get to those really difficult bosses or those moments that you get stuck on, and then you finally overcome it, the payoff is just this overwhelming sense of, oh my God, I did it. Oh my God, I'm getting it. Oh my God, this is so cool. And so I think that that's part of why the whole Dark Souls recipe was just so potent and powerful, because yes, if you do go into it knowing that, yeah, it's going to be challenging, it's probably going to slap me over its knee, then you learn to understand and temper your expectations accordingly. And then if there's that payoff when you finally do overcome that hurdle and you have that overwhelming sense of self-satisfaction.
Yeah. And actually this, excuse me, I sound like an 8-year-old smoker.
Cigarette?
Oh, darling, what's going on? My name is Edna.
Do you want some chocolate, kiddo?
Chocolate?
Chocolate! Come here and sit on Auntie's lap. Chocolate. How did we get on this? From Dark Souls to chocolate. Okay.
Ease of accessibility versus ease of playability. And I've said this so many times to people of where so many people want an easy mode with Dark Souls that I'm thinking it kind of ruins the fun of the harshness that it provides the player. Now, I want to make something very clear, you guys. Ease of accessibility, like the accessibility in the game, do not confuse that with ease of playability. They're two completely different things. Accessibility is how the controller works, how assets for the color blindness works, how different things are made so that people can have an easier time enjoying the game. Ease of playability is having a story mode or an easier difficulty setting.
Well, I first feel frustrated by how ableist it is for people who say, I want more accessibility options when they're completely able-bodied. All that they're saying is that they want a game to be easier for them. That's not accessibility. Accessibility is to help people who would otherwise be impaired or disadvantaged be able to experience this alongside other able-bodied individuals. And I find that very frustrating how they try to twist that and then make it about them, meaning people who quote accessibility for ease of play. I find that very frustrating. Now, an accessible game An accessible game would be something that is easy for anybody to pick up, sure. But if we're talking about accessibility in the industry, don't confuse the two. Just own it. You want easy mode. Okay, just call a spade a spade. With that proviso out of the way, do we need an easy mode in Dark Souls? I just talked about how like this game is designed to punish you. This game is designed to be unfair or unforgiving. But the unfairness, you realize that you also have just as much autonomy, just as much agency as you do unfairness in the game. The game doesn't punish you without giving you just as much tools to be able to thwart or sidestep or to overcome said hurdle. This is a journey of learning. If you're not into this experience wanting to learn and grow from your mistakes, excuse me, and you're just blaming the game for being too hard, then yeah, you're resistant to learning. Of course you're not. When you die, what your take should be is, that's my fault, and I need to learn how to grow. I need to learn how to get better. Now, there's the other side of the coin of those hyper elitists, and they're like, "Well, get good, scrub," and you know, it became a bit of a meme and haha for meme's sake. But then there are those other people who really do. They get it, they understand it, and then they look at somebody who's really just honestly having a hard time with it, and then they make snide remarks like that at them. That's not helpful either. So I think that ultimately, no, I don't think that Dark Souls should have an easier mode. I don't think a story mode would be really. It would really dilute the profoundness of the Dark Souls experience. But there also isn't a narrative.
Yeah, it's based off of the equipment that you get, the things that you pick up,
right.
The items that you read, the description of. That's the story. Like that's
right.
It's the same thing in Elden Ring too. People complain there wasn't a story there. It's like there is if you bother to look. Like that's, you know, I don't mean to be mean, but it is kind of the thing of where it's like there is a story in these games, and it's a profound story of humanity and the struggle to find your soul. That's basically what it is.
So over on my channel, I do a lot of theory crafting. As you're well aware, I've been deep, like eyeballs deep into Monster Hunter Wilds theory crafting, news, lore, speculation, all that jazz. And one of the things that I has been kind of like this mantra of mine is these patterns where Capcom has a lot of these very similar hallmarks in their dev patterns or dev cycles. The imagery that they use teasing something to provide context or a greater context as to what we can expect in the game as they develop, and then very intentional language that they use to describe the game when they provide their updates leading up to the date of release. Ryozo Sugimoto mentioned in his address that, hey, like, you know, thank you for your passion. There's not so much that we can talk about yet, but, you know, I'm very excited in the coming days as you, the community, dissect the trailer together and all. And so he knew that they planned that, right? So when you're talking about something like that, you have to think, you know, outside the box. You have to read between the lines. You have to do stop hyperfixating on that thing. Everybody's yelling at you. Don't hyperfixate. Oh, great. Another video about this, rehashing the same reused content. Wow, you're really milking it, Coyote. Wow. You know, like that's not a sour topic by any means.
Too, by the way, where people are just like, the most obnoxious ever, and it's just like I'm thinking to myself, do they not realize that this is what a lore video is about? It's about dissecting things to the most finest point ever. I know,
but there's in one of my videos I talked about how the expectations in the gaming community have risen a lot. And over the course of the last 10 or so years, I mean, there has been a higher and higher bar to hit with regards to graphical fidelity, gameplay elements, storyline and narrative delivery, to the point that it's all mirroring box office hits. And there was a comparison that was done with the movie industry in the entertainment, or the movie segment of the entertainment industry. So you think of things like Hollywood, for instance, and then the gaming. The gaming side is nearly 8 times the size of the movie industry. We as gamers are the vast majority. And what that's done is that's had a really, really magnifying effect on those expectations. And unfortunately, there is also a wide array of individuals who only want a Hollywood-style narrative where the storyline is then fed to them. And unfortunately, there's a lot of other gamers who don't like that. Well, unfortunate for them, I should say, and they don't really appreciate the fact that there's a lot of us who really want to be able to theory craft. We want to lore craft. We want to read between those lines, peel those layers away, and get deep into the idea of speculation and the what could be's.
Oh, we went. I forgot about this question. This is going to be a good one. If you could replay any boss at all from any Souls game, what would it be?
Yep. The Moonlight Butterfly, because that thing's a pushover.
That's such a good... That's true.
I mean, if I wanted to like guarantee that I would never go hollow, I would never have to respawn and then go get my souls back and then fight the same boss over again. The Moonlight Butterfly's got me set. I'll be good. Like if I were actually having to be me and I got transplanted into the world of Lordran, that would probably be it.
Oh, see, I'm trying to think now. I think the Capra Demon, that was easy as fuck.
I loved the Capra Demon when I got his dogs away from me.
Yeah, the dogs. But at least they give you humanity sometimes.
I mean, they do, but then so do the rats.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. That and the what is it? If you see like in like the snakes, the lizard men area, sometimes they'll give you like humanity or something like that, if I remember correctly. But it's really interesting because a lot of those, like especially in Dark Souls 3, if you look at like the Abyss Walkers and everything, even those were a little bit of a pushover if you got the timing right.
Right, but I think people need to remember that a lot of boss fights that we have difficulties with is because we haven't learned that rhythm, or we haven't, like we're stuck in hack and slash mode, or we're just not paying attention to our timings, stuff like that. Every boss is not designed to be cheap. It's designed to be challenging. And then it takes us a little bit of like fiddling, a little bit of learning, kind of like, taking off the training wheels again for the first time, except this is the 7th time in Dark Souls. And we relearn those patterns. It's just an experience in learning. And yeah, I mean, once you get their patterns down, they become real easy.
And that's actually, it's interesting you say that, because there were a few bosses that I will admit I for sure cheesed because I was like, I don't want to deal with this guy. It's just annoying. Fair. But there was one boss that for sure I was like, I'm glad I found the cheese for this. This was absolutely wonderful. Was the final boss of the DLC for Dark Souls Remastered. And it was
Manus?
Yes.
Okay.
And I went over and there was kind of like a remnant of a hollow that you could see in multiplayer. And I saw that they were standing over a cliff edge. And I was like, I wonder what that is. Goes to investigate it. And you can see the little red eyes of Manus peeping through the hole. And if you shoot arrows at it at the right way, you could get that boss down entirely without ever going into the boss arena.
Okay, fair. I, on the other hand, made friends with Sif and summoned him.
Oh my god, that was
you can
summon him.
Fighting alongside Sif in that fight.
That was wonderful.
There was so much that was really beautifully done, I feel, in the Dark Souls 1 DLC. But when we were talking about kind of how Dark Souls 2 is really hit or miss for a lot of people, I don't know how many people realize that it was a different team that developed it. So that's why it feels differently.
Yeah, Miyazaki didn't work on it at all.
He did work on the DLC though. He was the dungeon designer for the DLCs.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Yep. So that's why you get to like Broom Tower, for instance, and it's like, oh, this feels like Dark Souls. Okay. It was so good. Oh, I loved it. And then of course, 3 was Dark Souls Nostalgia Edition is what it was, because there was so much of it that was those sort of like reflections back to things that were from the original game, including Firelink Shrine, which was just absolutely awesome. But unfortunately for me, I don't find it nearly as memorable because Dark Souls 3 was just this nostalgia trip where it didn't necessarily do enough to be so painfully unique.
Yeah.
At least in my mind, anyway. Like Dark Souls 1 was.
I can understand that. I mean, the one thing that I got away from Dark Souls 3 were two main things. The fact that it was more unified and linear than any Dark Souls that I've ever really seen, which I'm a big fan of linear, but I also really like the fact that they go along their own pace with a lot of like Souls games, and you have to really dig deep to find the meaning. But also the fact that you were fighting a personified bonfire as the final boss.
that was a little meta, wasn't it?
It was.
It's very unusual. I feel that a game could give you that sort of, not the sense of euphoria necessarily, but almost like dysphoria, where you're so taken aback by what you're seeing, and this moment is actually has petrified you in a sense of simulated terror, really, where you're like, cool, I just got through one of the hardest fights in the game and now I'm scared stiff.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's how I felt whenever I fought Orphan of Cause, because that took me a few days actually to get down. But that was actually, I don't know if a lot of people know this, but that was the whole reason why I bought Bloodborne, was to fight that boss.
You wanted to fight it? We really do have masochism, like just deep in your blood.
I loved it so much because I saw one of my friends live streaming on Twitch, and he was fighting this boss called Orphan of Cause, and I saw him dragging around this fucking placenta thing, just swinging it, and I'm just like, so this guy is literally flinging his baby sack at us. He's he's going through, and we saw the first cutscene, and I was like, oh my God, it's actually really sad. Like, it's really morbid, but it's really sad. And I did like a little bit of co-op for it because I wasn't sure if I could beat it. But then I was like, no, I'm going to beat this boss on my own. I got through Ishin and I'm going to do it on my own. And I ended up doing that. And I'm like, I think 6 trophies away from getting platinum in Bloodborne after over 400 hours of gameplay.
Jesus.
Yeah, I know.
I can't imagine putting that many hours in. Like, I wanted to like Bloodborne more than I did, and in reality, it's my own fault. So it's no fault of Bloodborne's, but the difference in pacing. So you know how like a lot of it incentivizes you for rushdown tactics in Bloodborne, because that's how you get the blood. I think the blood echoes, and then restore your HP on top of that.
Right. Exactly.
So restoring your HP requires you to be very forward, whereas in Dark Souls, it's much more methodical, and it's much more like even paced, where you're going to make your attack, you're going to watch and observe the enemy's positioning and counter their attacks. You're like ready to make your move the moment they do, and it's just completely spun on its head in Bloodborne. And I don't want to say that I didn't like it, but I just couldn't get into it enough to be able to give it its honest shake, and then to become proficient at it to the point where I really enjoyed the game.
Right, and that's understandable too. I mean, like, Bloodborne was just a different animal entirely whenever it came to Soulsborne games. It was one of those things of where, like, I didn't own a PS4 until a couple of years ago, because it was one of the games that, like, it was a gift from my dad for me on my birthday that year, and it came with, like, it didn't come with it, but like, he got Bloodborne edition for me, and I was just like, I could actually like play this game now and go through it. And it was the first game I played on a PlayStation. And it's so interesting because it's like, I understand why it doesn't click with some people, because it's such a different pace than any other Souls game. Like even Demon Souls remastered, or remake, I should say, is even a different pace. It's more Bloodborne pace, I would think, than the original Demon Souls.
Fair. It is faster paced than the original one for sure. I feel that it's closer. I think it's closer to the first Dark Souls if I were to make an estimation. But then again, I didn't play enough Bloodborne really to be able to make a fair comparison. But at least that's what it reminded me of. Whereas the original Demon Souls was very, very floaty.
Yeah, that's what I saw from videos. I never played the original. I only ever played the remake of it.
Yeah, I've enjoyed what I've played of the remake, by the way. It's a lot of fun, and I die a lot, and I'm like, yeah, that's par for the course.
I do have to double check, though, because I know people will be on my ass about it if I get this wrong, but I believe, now that I think about it, it was like only like 341 hours that I put into Bloodborne. I just have to double check, because people will be like, no, you only put in this many amount of hours, you fuckface.
Wow, that's not gonna hold a couple of hours over your head. Good grief.
They do. I finished reviewing Mortician's Assistant, which, by the way, thank you guys so much for the review on that. Thank you, because they sent me the code, and I was like, oh my god, this is awesome. And I finished the game in like a couple of hours, because there are different endings that you can get, and I finished one of them in a very short amount of time. One person commented, we saw your Steam page. How can we rely on someone who only finished the game in a couple of hours? I'm like, bro.
Have you nothing better to do with your life? I'm sorry, what?
It's ridiculous. And that's why I'm like double checking and rechecking all the time. Where exactly? Oh god, I feel like a grandmother. It's like, do you use this button to control the temperature?
I love the Brooklyn accent you go into. You just like slip into it there.
Something, Jesus Christ. Well, just to clarify, it's either 341 hours that I put into it or over 400. Whichever way, it's still a lot of hours.
Yeah, I mean, it's you got your money's worth and then some.
It's actually interesting because I think I might have talked about this on Twitter, but coming up, I am going to be doing a parrying guide for Orphan of Cause and Lady Maria, so you guys can understand like how just incredibly easy these bosses are to parry. Like Lady Maria, her entire boss revolves around being parried. If you can't parry her, it makes it way more difficult to go about that boss.
Well, parrying timing and parrying mechanics are two different things. And so being able to have something visually demonstrate exactly what that looks like, it definitely will help. Yeah, for sure. There are quite a few videos out, like for Monster Hunter. That's just like my go-to right now because I'm doing so much Monster Hunter content. But you know, like a Monster Hunter, like weapon guides, for instance, on that, or build guides and whatnot. And those sorts of informative things are so useful because everybody's out there looking like, what else could we do with this? What else can we try? How else would we be able to do this? Or can you help me, give me a leg up for fighting this boss, for instance? It's neat.
Yeah, and that's the one thing that I found really rewarding about doing some of the boss guides, like for Father Gascoigne, or as I like to call him, Daddy Gascoigne. He actually was one of the. He was like, a little bit, yeah. It was interesting because I went through and I did a parry guide for him, and he does this thing that I like to call like right across the face, but that I didn't want to offend anybody. But you guys are hearing it now, and I want it to be more just. I don't want. I have to please some people, and I just call like the slap. And a lot of bosses in Bloodborne do this, of where they'll do this raising hand motion, and that's when you know that it's a perfect moment to parry them because it's like, oh, I'm gonna slap you. Shoot, just kidding. It's like you shoot them, and then you can literally get Father Gascoigne down in maybe like 6 or 7 shots at most. Like it's not, yeah.
Well, before the camera went rolling, this is when Ariel and I were getting ready to record, right? We were talking about when I had done Dark Souls Remastered on stream back when I was a Twitch streamer back in like 2018, right? And this is just rehashing the same thing for you, but to your viewers, my community wanted me to play it because Dark Souls had such a reputation. Little did they realize. And like I'm parrying everything all the way from Firelink Shrine through the Undead Burg and through Sen's Fortress. I ended up ringing both bells, and they're like, "You're not dying, Jade. This isn't what we signed up for." And I'm like, "I'm sorry."
It's wonderful whenever you get to like see people's reactions in chat, and it's just like, I thought you were gonna be bad at this.
Think again.
Exactly. It's one of those weird moments of where like after you have the clicking moment and after you find so much love for this franchise, there's literally no going back. And I know, again, it'll show more towards the masochism, but I finished the majority of Souls games in less than a year.
That's good.
And I don't know whether that's worrying or whether or not that's good, but I literally went through and played in order Dark Souls Remastered, Bloodborne, tried Actually, I will preface this. I did try Dark Souls 2 before I went into Bloodborne, and then I was like, no, I'm just going to wait for a little bit on that one. Went into Bloodborne, then went into Sekiro Shadows Die Twice, Dark Souls 3, Elden Ring, when that came out. And then after that, I went into Demon Souls, but that wasn't until, gosh, I want to say this past year, at the beginning of the year. So I literally finished the majority of them in like less than a year. And people were like, what? And I was like, come at me, bro.
So when are you getting your Dark Souls tattoos?
I know. I know.
I mean, I can't take off my shirt and show you my dark sign, but that sounds so raunchy. I'll show you my dark sign if you show me yours.
Listen, I only have a hollowed, okay? Man. It's interesting though too, because when I talk with so many people about Dark Souls games, it's like a family almost. And so many people say like a Dark Souls community is probably the most toxic. What part about this is toxic? Like, you get, of course, the bad eggs in the family, obviously. But when it comes down to it, the Soulsborne community wants to see people grow. That's why we kind of have this friendly connotation with get good or skill check. Because when we look at the get good section of everything, it's more of kind of like that brotherly, sisterly love of like, oh, we'll help you out, get good, or like just poking fun. But of course, when it's taken out of context and when you don't have that kind of variable to, of experience to back up for the knowledge or anything, or don't have the knowledge of the community, of course, people will take it out of context, and that's only fair.
I think it's unfortunate when there are either bad actors in a community that ends up being the loudest voices that really ruin it for the rest of other people, or there are those other people who just have a chip on their shoulder and somehow think that they're more elite than other people, and their get good is meant in a more malicious manner than the sort of gentle ribbing that we might have with one another. There's that sense of camaraderie. I mean, Solaire said it himself, jolly cooperation, right?
Yes.
Like that was a lot of the intent behind the multiplayer. Was you're going to be subject to a world that is designed to punish you, so why not do it with friends?
Exactly.
Like that's a great part of it. But they did also add obviously the invasion mechanics for those who just really want to wreck someone's day.
It's fun. I like it.
You're one of those, are you? Oh,
I'll go in and I'll invade. So I'm a mate. I'm like a Dex mage in Elden Ring. I went and invaded someone and I completely just wrecked their day. And I'm just like, yes, achievement unlocked towards the platinum.
Oh, well, all right. Hopefully you don't find my red stone.
It's actually interesting that you brought up Solaire, because I mentioned this in a video and not too many people give me crap for it, but I honestly wanted to bring it up in this because you deserve to know. I didn't know that Solaire was an NPC that was friendly. So I instantly went in and killed him.
Please tell me you didn't do what I think you did.
I went in and instantly killed him because I didn't know he was a friendly NPC. Jade. Praise the sun. I'm sorry. He came at me and then I went and I whacked him accidentally, and then he started going towards me and I was like, praise the sun, motherfucker.
Okay, all right. I'm sending you my therapist bill because I'm going to need to call her after this. Thanks for that. You ganked Brolaire? Come on! Oh.
I was a noob. I didn't realize how important he was. And I did a
So
psychologically gaming on his character. Such a sad character. He's just trying to find his son.
I know. And then he ends up just rotting with a bunch of bugs.
Yeah, and the maggot thing that like flashes the sun really brightly at him, he ends up attacking the hollow if he gets too close, because it's like, oh, I thought you were the sun. And literally, it's a sign for depression, because people are just trying to find their happiness and find their joy in life. And I'm just like, oh, why you gotta make it so sad?
You really feel for the dude. Like, you get to the end of his story arc and you're just like, oh, homie.
That's the same way I felt about Artorias. It was like he used to help people, and now he just got so crippled by the darkness.
I mean, even Sif knew that things weren't right with him, you know, because at that point in time, when you meet Sif, you know, way back in the DLC, for instance, you know, Sif's alone. He's kind of like hunkered on himself, like he knows like something's wrong. And then back into the present time, when you get through the DLC, I mean, he's literally guarding Artorias's tomb, his tombstone, right? Like, it's just like, oh, best boy.
Sif is always best boy. I mean, you know, Artorias right up there.
Wait a minute. You actually do have Artorias up there, don't you? Hold on.
Over.
Yeah, there he is. Ah.
You go first, and then I'll tell you my favorite NPC.
Well, I think you might have a guess at this point.
The guy that I killed, right?
yeah, definitely Brawler. No, I love Solaire. I think Solaire's whole story arc and mythos. I think he's really a great character, and he's the one ray of sunshine that you get quite literally early in game. That is your shred of hope and access to being able to help other people. Definitely don't really take offense to the fact that you killed him, but no, not Solaire.
Wait a second. Let me see if I can try to guess. Is it that creepy dude who sits in Firelink Shrine going, ha 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 ha?
Why would he be my favorite NPC? I mean, the dude.
He's sitting there and he's so metal, and he goes through and he's just like watching everyone, and you're a people watcher too, so.
I'm not entirely sure how I'm going to take that, but we'll have a conversation after this is all over, all right? No, he's literally the Dark Souls equivalent to a soft taco. All right, I'm going to pick him up for $1.50 at, I don't know, Taco Bell.
Wait, okay, I'll take one more guess. Mr. Onion Suit guy.
Oh, Siegmeyer?
Yes.
Oh, you know, okay. That's oh crap. Okay. No, that wasn't what I was going to say. No, but and I love that about him. You're right. He is a good character, but no, he wasn't who I was going to say. I was actually going to say Sif.
Oh my God. Okay. Cause I figured since Sif was a boss, I didn't know if that counted.
Well, if it doesn't count, then I can't say my other favorite, which would be Artorias.
That's true.
Because he's also technically a boss now too. So,
but Sif is because he's an NPC that you can have in the boss battle.
Right.
Yeah. So I'd like, best boy.
Yeah. Sif. Bless him. And he guarded that tomb.
I love it. And the story of whenever it's just like you see him limping as you like in the boss battle, I'm just like, why? Why did they have to get the doggo? Why?
I just want to pet the poofer.
I know, and they made like a special edition like little statue of him like holding the sword, and I want to get it so much in honor of Sif.
Although Siegmeyer of Katarina was a really good mention, though. I love Onion Man. Onion Man. I imagine he smells like onions too, so I don't know. I might want to like chop him up and put him on a sandwich if I smelled him. But
whoa, wait a second. That's going a little bit.
Oh, that was weird. Oh, that was weird. That made it weird. Okay, you over there, just like hey, Solaire. How's it going, buddy?
That's the intro of the podcast. Bonk. Surprise, motherfucker.
My God, like
I'm trying to think, like there's one NPC that it's not going to be anybody's favorite, but he's my favorite because of the lore and everything. He's he looks like Gollum in Dark Souls 3, and he's the king in that area of where he's sitting up on his throne, and he's literally like the fiddler on the roof. He's watching everybody, and he's going through and he's seeing everybody at their demise, every hollow, every creature that goes through and tries to change the course of history, but they literally can't. Oh, the fruit of pygmy. That was it.
Yeah. Yeah, because the furtive pygmy was actually mentioned in the intro to Dark Souls 1. So again, Dark Souls 3 being that sort of like callback. I mean, I guess that does, yeah, that's a measured step better than jolly cooperate this motherfucker. Bonk.
It's true.
But yeah, all right, fair. I think that's neat. That's definitely, there's definitely some rich symbolism that's there. I mean, the furtive pygmy, you know, some folks have theorized how that's a representation of humanity as we know it, as opposed to humanity as was, you know, constructed and fabricated by the gods, so to speak. And then, you know, the undead, they're technically not really human. So that's interesting.
Yeah, but you also have the technical NPC, even though it's a boss battle, because you have to fight both of them. But for a while, it acts like an NPC, the Prince boss battle in Dark Souls 3.
Right.
And you have him kind of like, it's the one boss of where the dialogue during the boss battle happens, and you don't really see that too often within a boss battle in Dark Souls, of where he almost feels sorry for the Hollowed of what they're about to do, because they're either going to destroy the world or bring about a new cycle all over again. So when I see that the Prince keeps getting healed, and this guy is talking about, I forgive you, but I also feel so bad for you. And it's like, oh my God.
It's right here. I get it. You know, weight of the world on my shoulders. Thanks for reminding me.
But also, I don't know if it would be considered an NPC. The Fire Maiden in Demon Souls.
Okay, so the blind maiden in the Nexus. Yeah. So she actually, when I was thinking about these questions, I wasn't sure if I wanted to mention her or not. But the reality is that she was probably the reason I bought Demon Souls, because I heard her narrative, the chant that she has every time that you provide supplication, so that way you can give her the souls and then she can give you levels, you know, the strength within. Her kind of mantra, her chant that she does, she always has that sort of like free verse poem that she's reciting every time. Oh,
it's so good.
So good.
It kind of reminds me of like the lines that the doll says in Bloodborne, may you find your worth in the waking world. Like, oh my God. It's just so good. It resonates with me so much, of where like people never really truly find their meaning until almost the end of their life.
Yeah. Oh.
And I know it's kind of morbid, but it's actually like, it kind of falls in line with Dark Souls, because Dark Souls is literally a story about life, if we think about it.
Yeah.
So, but if we want to end on a happy-go-lucky note as much as we can with Souls games, what is one thing that you want to ask me about Dark Souls, and then I'll ask you one thing about Dark Souls. Okay.
All right. So for you, when you first heard of Dark Souls, well, let me preface it first. Did you actually hear of Demon Souls first?
No, I heard of Dark Souls first.
Okay, you heard of Dark Souls. Okay, great. Yeah. All right. So when you first heard of Dark Souls, what was the first thing someone told you about Dark Souls as to why you should play it?
It was actually because I reviewed a trailer for Elden Ring, and I said it looked like everything else I had ever played. There's magic that looks like, you know, a glorified version of The Witcher. And this was before I had ever played any Souls game. One of my friends was like, you need to try Dark Souls Remastered. It's difficult, and you will end up loving it. Thank me later. Okay. That's fair. It was a little more congenial at that point then, I guess, given that other people have just decided you should play Dark Souls. He. Yeah, basically. And then she said, be sure to look at player signs, because they leave like little messages. And I was one of those suckers that looked at the sign, jump here, and jumped. I didn't know that they were trolling me.
Hey, look, we don't talk about it, but we've all been there. Okay, it's part of the experience. Ow! Like my vertebrae popped in my back.
That's because we're in our 30s.
Don't remind me, I'm older than you. Awesome. Man. All right.
So the question I have for you is, if you were going into a Souls game and you had to make up a build, can't use one of the builds that's already available to you, what kind of build would you create for yourself?
I'd go in naked.
Let me solo her.
yeah, literally. That's the one thing that I think I've never done, was just a fully naked build with nothing but my fists.
It's fun.
And yeah, I'm going to name myself Mr. Van Fister.
Didn't expect that.
Did I say something funny? What? Oh, no. Okay.
Mr. Van Fister.
Well, I didn't say that. How did your mind get in the gutter so quickly? We went from wholesome darks.
Wholesome my ass.
Hold
some of this.
Anyways, but no, I would love to do just a completely like no armor, no weapons build, and just build my character so that way I could effectively use the fists. Is that ever going to be nearly as good as a full kitted out build? No, but it would be fun to do for the lulz.
Yeah, I actually am doing a not fully naked build because YouTube has rules, but I had one of where like in Lords of the Fallen, no clothing or anything like that, but just double whammy slammy weapons. And it is so much fun. I think I recorded the look on my face when I was going through some of the walkthrough.
Right.
My God, these weapons are powerful. Like you can overpower all of these weapons in Lords of the Fallen so much. Hey, excuse me, I got a hiccup.
It's so exciting that you got hiccups. It scared the hiccups into you. Chat, we'll give her a moment. Just
Chat?
Oh yeah, we're not even on chat. It's not going to be live. Old habits die hard.
The Twitch is still ingrained in your brain.
God, no.
Oh my gosh. Hey, Jesus Christ oh my God. I do have to say thank you so much for being on this podcast with me. It has been a treat. My sides are sore. The grin is ever bearing. And I just want to say just huge shout out, by the way, to you for reaching 1,000 subscribers. You guys, if you have not already, please follow Jade. They're absolutely incredible human being. And if you ever get a chance to ever be in one of their live streams that they do on YouTube or just pop into their comment section, they do absolutely amazing content. Truly, it's wonderful. So, you guys, with that being said, if you all like my face and what I do, please be sure to subscribe and hit that bell down below. I make videos every weekday here on YouTube. When you find your worth in the waking world, dear hunter, stay casually nerdy, and I will see you all in the next video. Umbasa.